Hi everyone, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in making this fun and funky wired necklace working with memory wire to actually form shapes with some wide jaw pliers to create this fun floating necklace. So the key to this floating wire necklace is to really have the correct pliers on hand to make it easier for you to bend the memory wire. We are using memory wire, and you can do 1 turn of memory wire or 2 turns of the bracelet memory wire to make bigger and smaller kind of preset designs of triangles and squares. In the design here, I used a big form, kind of working with the different triangular shapes there and working with the gold memory wire. I have some silver memory wire here, and I have smaller ones that I've made out of 1 loop of my memory wire, and this is the 1 3/4 memory wire size and inch measurement as far as the wrist. You can use necklace wire for this too, because it doesn't really matter because you're bending it into these new positions. The only one that you do want to avoid is the ring, because it's small and it'll be a little bit harder to hold on to. 1 loop around will get you the smaller one here, and then 2 loops are what I'm working with as I get in and do a bigger one. To cut the memory wire, you want to make sure that you have a really great cutters, like a memory wire cutters. It's going to be helpful because the memory wire is really brittle and it's hard to turn and it's hard to actually snap. You want to make sure that you're not using your regular wire cutters to cut the memory wire, because it will destroy them, and also it won't get a nice clean cut on the actual memory wire. You also want to have handy a pair of wide jaw pliers, as well as a nice sturdy round nose pliers. And then also, if you want to, you can have a nylon jaw pliers handy, or another chain nose pliers ready to be handy to help you kind of do those final turns. The most important thing is that the loops in the middle of the piece here are going to line up from one another. So when we go in and use several pieces of our beading wire or any sort of cord to go through here, that it lines up in the middle of the coil design. This necklace itself, which I wore during one of our Twitch live streams, I had a customer ask and a viewer asked me to do the video on it. This necklace here is about 12 or 13 years old, so this is kind of the fun thing of recreating and making a new one. I have some matted rounds in the 12mm aquamarine glass here that I'm going to add in between the designs. So to create the designs, we are going to begin with the memory wire. Again, I have it cut into a 2 loop section, so 2 complete loops. 1 loop, again, was that smaller that we're going to put on the end. I'm going to be using mainly my wide jaw pliers, those chain nose pliers, and I'm going to begin by leaving about 1/4 inch of wire that I'll use for my loop and doing my first turn. This wire is brittle, and you may want to wear some gloves if you're working with it so you don't poke your fingers. I'm going to go about the width of the jaw, double the width of the jaw, and do my next turn on my pliers. And this is going to give you resistance. That's why we're using the memory wire, because we want this to keep its kind of fun, funky floating wire shape. I have stepped down to the end of my turn, and I've gone in and turned the pliers 1 more time to create 2 triangles. Again, going in and holding. I'm going to go in and maybe bend this one a little bit further so that triangle starts a little bit more to be isosceles rather than the full triangular shape. Going in here, I'll make it a little bit bigger. And you can see I'm just using my hands to make a series of triangles. You can do squares if you want to, and getting those turns in the design. Now this memory wire is really stacked close to one another. While you're building, go ahead in and kind of pull it apart a little bit so you can separate out those triangles and get a little bit more depth to the design. Now that I have them separated a little bit, I'll continue to go in. And this is really a free-form design where you don't need any kind of rhyme or reason to how you're doing the triangles and where they are setting up. Again, the most important thing in this is making sure that when you are finished, the loops sit right across from one another so it's strung nicely on the design. As you get further in the design, you may want to grab a pair of chain nose pliers to hold with multiple pliers to make it easier to hold and to do the turns in the design. Again, you can hold with the pliers, grab another set of pliers, and make your additional turns in the design by holding on to the 2 pairs of pliers. I'm going to continue to make my series of my triangles, kind of pull them apart and have fun making them bigger and smaller, and then show you how we are going to string them together, as well as make the loops on the ends so that way they do line up with my round nose pliers. So at the end of the wire here, you're going to make your loops. And you can see I've pulled this out a little bit and kind of played having fun towards the end. To make the loop, you want to make sure that you have a nice round nose pliers that is going to be kind of strong enough to bend the memory wire. I'm going to hold at the end of that memory wire, as well as with my needle nose pliers, holding below the round nose pliers. I'm going to use those round nose pliers to kind of feed a loop down, then move my needle nose pliers down a little bit further and continue to roll that loop down. I want the loop to be closed enough that the wire is not going to pop out of the loop when I'm going in and adding in the thread or wire or cord below it. Once you have that loop started, you can reposition your pliers to make it that you can hold on and have a kind of nice grab on it to go back in and continue to finish up that loop. Once the loop is starting to get smaller, you can go in now with your needle nose or your chain nose pliers and kind of flatten it down so that way you can close it up. Once you have it closed up on both sides, you're going to kind of draw a line, or you can take another piece of memory wire or a needle here and just take your needle through one of those loops. Once you make the loop on the other side, just make sure that those loops are lining up. If they are not lining up, you can take your pliers and make little bends in your wire in order to make sure that those loops line up along the sides. Again, that's going to be the most important as we go and put all these fun little coils onto our strands of our beading wire. Since I already have one of the designs on some wire, and this is regular beading wire or beading cable, and it's a Beadalon 0.018 in the gold color, I did 4 strands of those along with a big gold brass bead here. You can put the beads also in between your little coiled sections. I have 5 coiled sections that I made. I'm putting the smallest one on, and I'm using the Chinese knotting cord just to change it up a little bit so you can see the cord underneath. I have on one of my beads, then my smallest piece of my little coil, then another one of my beads, then another coil. And again, the best thing to make sure is that your coils are straight and that those loops, if they're not straight, are not going to sit nicely with the cord. And I'll show you here, if you get the cord stuck, you can kind of wrap it around the design and coil it around here. You can see how it'll go right onto that coil. From here, make sure that your edges, again, are not open and that you don't have the chance for the cord to escape. Let that go down to the bottom of the necklace. Add on your next bead and then your next coil. So you just repeat this the whole length of the project, adding in however many coils you want, which again, the coil amounts and the coils that you do are optional in both sizes and amounts when you're working on it. Because it is the memory wire, it will have a little spring and a little give to it, but it will keep its shape really nicely as you wear the piece. You don't want to use a super heavy bead along with this because you do risk the fact that you're going to kind of squash those memory wire pieces together. That's why in the gold design, I do have the hollow bead with it. Once you have all of your wires on and your beads on, I'm going to show you how we're going to do a slip knot along the back of this Chinese knotting cord. Also, after you put the beads on and the designs on, you just kind of want to look, make sure again that those loops are sitting correctly and hanging out correct with the curve of the bead as well as the curve of the thread that sits below the coils. After the beads, I've just tied a knot to hold my coiled sections in place with both the left and the right side. On the right side here, I've tied a slip knot, which I'll show you how to do on the left side, which makes the necklace adjustable and you don't need a clasp. Over on the right side, I've completed it so that way you can see that the right cord or one cord is tied onto the left side. And then on this side here, I have the right cording in my hand and I'm going to tie onto this other piece as well. So I have my 2 cords that are right next to one another. And I'm going to take the cord here that is shorter that's going to get tied to this piece that's already attached and wrap it once and twice along that longer piece. Taking that short tail then, go through those loops that you just created and give a nice tight pull. That creates a little bit of a knot that will then slip along the design so that way you can shorten or lengthen the piece by holding on to the opposite side and sliding that slip knot along the back and then bringing it down to the front on either side. Once I'm done then with those and make sure that they're even, I'm going to trim the ends of those little slip knots and be able to wear the design without having to use or add a clasp. Thanks so much for joining me in making this floating wire necklace. Remember, you can make it fun and funky like this here on the actual cord. You can make it a little bit more uniform in a solid color of metal, whether or not it's gold or silver, and have fun playing around with the number of coils, the number of turns, and working with that memory wire. It's also a great way to use up some scraps of memory wire if you have smaller pieces left over from your spool. Remember, if you need any materials, you can check out below me the links in the description to PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. As always, it's great if you give a little thumbs up if you like the video. Comment below and let us know what you're having issues with, what changes you've made, or give other suggestions as well. You can always subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates from us here at PotomacBeads.com. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy your own floating wire necklace.